throughout the nation and around the globe. From his heart to yours, it's Dearjames Live, bringing you intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Connections, where we share wisdom one conversation at a time. Today's featured guest pierces veils and bridges gaps by unlocking the wisdom of the soul through dreams and imagery to heal more rapidly. For over 3 decades, spiritual psychotherapist and founder of the Institute of Dreams Tarotpy, Lauren Z. Schneider MA, MFT, has integrated family systems, hypnotherapy, dream work, and her pioneering method, Tarotpy, as a highly effective method of spiritual psychotherapy. Lauren is a lecturer, trainer, and author, a board-certified continuing education provider, and certified in advanced dream tending and certified embodied imagination practitioner. Lauren is the creator of Tarotpy, an integrative approach to psychotherapy that blends tarot, image, and depth psychology, and her award-winning book, Tarotpy, It's All in the Cards, A Pathway to Inner Wisdom, Divine Guidance, and Profound Healing, has received 2 gold medals from the Living Now and Next Generation Indie Book Awards, as well as a silver medal from the Nautilus Book Awards. Articles written by Lauren on dreams and Tarotpy are featured on Opus Archives, where she is a guest contributor, and published in the Encyclopedia of Sleep and Dreams and Ecotherapy, Healing with Nature in Mind. Through her practice based in Santa Barbara, California, Lauren offers individual consultations, workshops, trainings, and ongoing groups for both healthcare professionals and lay people around the world. Please welcome our featured guest, Lauren Schneider. Lauren, it's so wonderful to have you with us.
James, I'm so excited to be here and to talk to you.
There's
Very
so
honored
much.
to be a guest on your podcast.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. This is so exciting, and welcome, Kiki. So much of, we're going to obviously dive deep into Tarotpy, dreams, hypnotherapy. However, what we wanted to start with is this, and let me just put up an opening slide. It's Lauren Schneider, MA, MFT, Institute of Dreams Tarotpy, dreamsandtherapy.com. This is how you reach Lauren. But what we wanted to start with, Lauren, is spiritual psychotherapy. Explain.
So, in 1983, when I went into a master's program with tarot tucked into one pocket and the I Ching tucked into the other, not knowing what these divination tools were that I'd been handed, and not knowing that there was even a school or a field called spiritual psychotherapy, what I did know is that by definition, psychotherapy is about the healing of psyche or soul. And yet soul was left out of the curriculum and left out of most of our educational trainings. And often it gets left out of the therapy room. And this is not to say that I love psychotherapy of all kinds and respect the way that so many people can reach people through different mediums. Cognitive therapy is incredibly beneficial. But for me, the idea of the mystery and the depth and the wisdom of soul, the depth of somebody's own inner wisdom and psyche, is where the healing is.
It's always an inside job, right?
Yeah. And this even goes back to the roots of our early medicine as we know it. Even in allopathic medicine, the Hippocratic Oath, which we recognize as do no harm, actually began with a prayer to the gods to make the physician worthy of healing the patient. So the idea, even in our early roots of medicine, is that there is something that's a divine life spark that we have to tap into to help people heal. And that's what hypnotherapy does. It's what dreams does. It's what Tarotpy does. It goes right to the depths of that unconscious inner wisdom, and beyond that, soul.
And it invokes the awareness, because again, healing, medicine, healing, and so forth. There's this great belief, if you will, that it is outside of us. It's external. It's someone else. It's the therapist. It's the doctor, the nurse, the healer. And to your point, of course, it's integrated. It's within. And it's how medicine, if you will, and I have great respect, as you've just said, for all forms of westernized, what I'm calling westernized medicine and so forth. And yet, what it has in some ways done is left absent the soul, the essence, that divine essence of ourselves. And to your point, spiritual psychotherapy brings them together, invites them in.
Exactly. And to say that it's an integration of traditional psychotherapy that recognizes that within us there is an unconscious blueprint of who we are that often knows who we are much greater than our conscious awareness. So we need to listen to our clients' inner wisdom. And then that's psychotherapy. And then there's this other aspect of it, which is the synchronicities that happen when you bring in therapy. The participation, as it feels like, of some invisible mastermind, that although the cards are random, they are so accurate to what somebody needs. So it brings in the idea that we're connected not only to our deepest self, but to something larger than self. And we know how powerful that is, particularly, like the 12-step programs have shown that in one of the most difficult afflictions, which is an addiction, which most psychotherapists, even Jung, gave up on, that reaching for community and a power greater than ourselves is what could help people to heal. And that's what I find with therapy, is that we're tapping into not only the deepest inner wisdom, which when somebody puts their inner wisdom out on the table, that's what therapy does. We're laying cards on the table. What we're doing in this interactive process is laying the unconscious on the table so that we can reflect on somebody's inner truth. And when they see their inner truth, they get clarity, they get guidance, they see a map of what their next steps are. Then there is this phenomenal synchronicity, and that is an awe-inspiring experience. And it's in the words you used at the beginning of your podcast. It's enlightening, it's awakening, it's enlivening. It awakens something within us that is so exciting that that's a life spark that has a life of its own. So I've seen people come out of a deep depression in one session because of this experience of something so connected to them deeply. But how could that be? And that awakens them.
And it awakens them, empowers them, rapidly accelerates, which will, and to your point, and this is from one of your guest writings at Opus Archives, you do not have to know anything about tarot or symbolism to do this practice. Instead, you can approach symbolic imagery without preconceived definitions. This is important because when we're going to step into what is tarotpy, so I wanted to bring up the point, you don't need to know anything about tarot or symbolism. It's how you're working with the imagery of the cards. So walk us through, Lauren, what is this pioneering method, tarotpy?
So tarotpy is very different than tarot reading, or even the way many therapists are using tarot. So the difference with tarot reading is that I'm not doing anything that is predictive. This is about being able to recognize the psycho-spiritual needs and process for somebody. But the difference with even the way some therapists are using it is that a lot of people look at tarot as having archetypal meanings. And so when they get a certain card, like the moon card, they're going to look at it a certain way, read it a certain way, perhaps about romance, perhaps about bringing the unconscious into conscious life. Right. For me, the moon card can be a very wonderful image of psychotherapy itself, where you're bringing something up from the unconscious.
Right, it reveals. Right, the moon reveals, right.
And it reveals. But with therapy, what I found is you're really meeting the living image, just the way we would meet a dream image. We don't have to know what it means. We discover it by being in conversation about it, by reflecting on it. And by reflecting on it, it stimulates our imagination, and all of a sudden insights arise spontaneously from the image. And the other thing is, because I discovered when I was doing my master's thesis in 1985, I discovered by accident that if I had somebody pick a deck, let's say out of a big collection of decks, which include tarot, oracle cards, dream cards, soul cards, if they choose the deck, they have more emotional resonance with the images, but also the image will be very specific to them, as opposed to if I just used a deck that most of us recognize, which is the typical Rider-Waite deck. So again, that's one of the ways that therapy is very different than traditional tarot reading, is I am asking people to pick a deck, I'm asking them to shuffle it, I'm asking them how many cards they need to look at, because they're consulting their unconscious about what do they need to know. I'm asking them how those cards are laid out, so that they're basically laying their inner blueprint on the table, rather than having a traditional layout, which is constricted. And what we're doing is now we're just reflecting on the images. If an image catches my attention, I know that in some way this might be significant to the client, because the images are a conduit between my unconscious and the client's unconscious. So if an image grabs my attention, I'm going to ask about it. And I'm going to ask how it's relevant. If the client doesn't free associate to the image, then what I will do is free associate and just offer, if this were my image, this is what it makes me think about. Or I'll ask a gentle question with an interpretation like, is this what's going on? And inevitably it'll be exactly what's going on. And in one session, we get to the heart of the issue, and then we also get answers. We get spontaneous creative solutions, because the language of the unconscious is image and metaphor. So we're stimulating the unconscious, we're stimulating imagination, and it's just being in a state of flow. Insights, creative solutions just arise.
And what's amazing about this is, again, I'm going to read from one of your writings at Opus Archives and then bring in a couple other aspects. This therapy is not fortune telling. Unlike traditional tarot readings in which there are preset formats and definitions, I begin by asking the client to focus inwardly and ask, how many cards do I need to look at? And that you pay careful attention to verbal, nonverbal cues and so forth. There's also this aspect of there's hundreds of decks, hundreds if not, 1,000. And so what's amazing too is the master weaver, the unseen, the soul, orchestrating the synchronicity. You speak to it as synchronicity. The synchronicities between therapist, soul and soul, client, patient, and how everything's energy, they're drawn to look at how many different decks you have, which ones are you can walk into a bookstore, you're pulled to something and you don't know why, and yet it's spot on. It's this very similar experience, and that then how you unlayer and reveal, and it brings me to this beautiful, we talked about this, a picture speaks 1,000 words, that in the revealing of the psyche, the soul, the issue, you get to the heart of the matter expeditiously, more rapidly, because sometimes we don't have the words, or we're afraid to use them. And to your point, when you lay the soul out on the table, it's just, it's magic.
Yeah, you're laying the unconscious on the table. And going back to where you began with the idea of spiritual psychotherapy, when I began this work in a traditional master's program for marriage and family therapy, I had no idea what I was doing. And certainly my teachers had no idea what I was doing. And I was just experimenting with what happens if I apply psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, family systems to playing with the cards. What was happening is I was having such extraordinary experiences with the people that came in by word of mouth to do therapy that it would take months to years of traditional therapy to get at what the cards revealed in one session.
Mm.
And it is because we are laying the unconscious on the table. And in a very practical way, when we're looking at images, we project ourselves onto them. We see the world as we are. So there's a lot of information that's going to come out as I'm asking questions about the images. But then, as you were talking about, it goes to this remarkable, like, there's an invisible mastermind here that is pulling exactly the image that brings up what's going on. And we can look at that in a psychotherapeutic framework, which is, Jung talked about this, that the self is an organizing principle. In other words, the self, who we are, has energy that organizes patterns of events around us. We help to create the world that we existed. But then there's something about the way that a deck, as you said, will call us, and the way that the exact card will come out that feels like the universe is participating with us in our evolution, in our growth. That's quite profound.
Inviting the unseen in, your soul. And we speak about a lot of this on Weekly Wisdom and Insights on that show, that where we've left the soul, the psyche, the soul out. It's been very ego, mind, personality, human driven, and not divine feminine soul driven. And this invites it forward.
Yes, and if we're looking at a counseling session, a psychotherapy session, as somebody needing deeper guidance because they feel like somehow their life is not fulfilling, meaningful, they're at a crossroads, they don't know where they're going, the soul has that clarity about who we are and what we're meant to do. And what truly is fulfilling and meaningful to who we uniquely are. So that's where therapy will get to, profound insights that give people a map of what does their soul want for them. Instead of us looking at how do I adapt to the outer world, what is it I need to get, like a car or a house or the right boyfriend or girlfriend, that is going to make me feel whole or that I belong. This is a much deeper sense of meaning.
Absolutely.
That comes into the.
Well, and again, because it invites, the soul is always true north. It's that, I call it God positioning satellite. It's not a religious statement, a spiritual statement that soul is guiding. It is only true north. It only knows true north. And so here it is. It invites that in. And to your point, through therapy with these images and so forth, it more rapidly advances healing and the awareness and pulling you center. And that's what I find so amazing. When I met you in Agoura Hills in California, and you were actually doing one of these group sessions, you had been gathered, and I was there sitting alone, and I hit, tarot, and I said, yes, I must go over. And that was my personal introduction to you with Tarotpy. And this it is pioneering and groundbreaking. And we talked about how, talk about the certifications and everything and the continuing education credits and so forth, because that's important too, to realize this is having broken the glass ceiling. Those are my words, but that it's been brought mainstream, that you've brought this mainstream. So speak to that for a moment as well.
So I do believe that a lot of therapists are intuitive by nature, and many therapists use images, cards, tarot, but they do it under the table because they don't feel that they're safe to bring this into their practice in a more visible way. And what I found is that I had that same feeling at the beginning, but I was so inspired by what was happening in these sessions with my clients that it kept making me jump over my shadow of fear about this is weird, this isn't fitting in. And so I just kept going. And what happened is I apprenticed myself to this practice, and Tarotpy continued to show me and to teach me depth psychotherapy. And I used it over 40 years in a clinical practice, and it kept deepening and sorry, I'm losing words for a moment. It basically created a very comprehensive modality for psychotherapy. And I found that this was groundbreaking. It's revolutionary. It accelerates therapy. It brings you into a flow so that I can trust the client's wisdom and the images to guide the session. It's a very developed modality now. And so after 35 years of using this as a clinician, I finally put together a big package and submitted it to the Board of Behavioral Sciences and said, this is an incredibly effective mode of psychotherapy. It took me 3 times. They kept asking for more information. But by the end of the year, they certified me to be a continuing education provider. And then again, the same thing with CAMFT, which is my California Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. I'm certified to be able to give continuing education credits. So I have a training program now for therapists and for lay people, because there are a lot of unlicensed gifted healers. And I believe, just like with dreams, that healing is a democratic gift, that we all do it. And therapy is a practice that people can use for themselves at home, which is why I developed the book, to teach people how to develop their therapy practice. It also is for psychotherapists. So the book also has clinical ways of using it and guidelines for psychotherapists. I do an 8-part course over 4 months that each class builds on the previous one so that people go deeper and deeper and deeper with the skills of therapy. And by the end of that, I certify them as a therapy practitioner.
And you have, I'm just going to bring this up now, you have an upcoming training that begins August 2nd, and with a promo code and so forth. So again, both for healthcare professionals and so forth, clinical practitioners and lay people alike. So, and of course, depending if you are a licensed mental health practitioner, you're going to receive continuing education credits and so forth. So, and if you're the layperson, as myself, you gain this wisdom that comes from this beautiful pioneering method. And let me just bring this in really quickly as well. Your book cover, this is your book, Tarotpy, it's all in the cards. A pathway to inner wisdom, divine guidance, and profound healing. When you and I were speaking, you had talked about how you took a break from your original practice, initial practice. Share why and how, because this played a fundamental role.
Yeah. So I had been practicing as a psychotherapist at that point at least 30 years. And in 2017, I took a break from my psychotherapy practice, from my traditional practice. I actually put my license on hold. I was burnt out. And I know that this is not unique to me, that this is a pretty common side effect of doing psychotherapy, in that we are, and it's particularly happening now, burnout is at a high proportion with psychotherapists at this time, and also anxiety and depression are epidemic right now, particularly since the pandemic. And so therapists are being overwhelmed by the number of clients that are needing help and by the level of existential anxiety that people are carrying. Now, therapists aren't necessarily trained in dealing with existential anxiety. And so what I found is, for me, I was burnt out and for a particular reason too. Many of us as therapists were trained as children in dysfunctional families, and I carried that early child complex that I was supposed to save my family, and I carried that into my work as a psychotherapist. That it was my responsibility to know what this client needed. It was my responsibility to have the right treatment plan, and that is certainly true of our training as psychotherapists, but that burden of responsibility eventually just weighs me out.
Weighs heavily, so, right? Yes.
Yeah. And it's a distortion of where the healing is really coming from. I have really good skills. I'm really good at diagnosing. I understand family systems, as I said, from the time I was 3. But I'm not the one that's going to save them. This is a process that happens partly humbly in the meeting, in the connections.
Right.
That being in a deep, intimate connection with somebody is deeply healing. But the other aspect of it is for somebody to see their deepest self, and for someone who's gifted at reflecting that to them. What I found, so I stepped away, I wrote my book in that time, and then I came back to my practice doing strictly therapy and dreams. And once I decided that as a psychotherapist, I'm working only with therapy and dreams, it's not that I don't listen to clients or listen to what brings them into therapy, but these are the tools that I use because it is the unconscious then that is speaking. And I trust the images, I trust the dreams to be telling me exactly what's going on with the client and exactly what they need. Andrew Weil, as a physician, said, if you listen to your clients, you will know exactly what's wrong. And if you listen very carefully, you will know the remedy because it's within us. So
yes,
for me, working with dreams in therapy, number one, helps me to go much deeper in every session. So every session is a revelation. Every session, people make significant shifts and have significant insight. The other thing is, I don't carry that complex when I'm doing therapy and dream work. I trust that I'm being guided and I'm in a state of flow and it just unfolds. And that's where I say, if I listen to the client's verbal and nonverbal cues and follow the images that come out, yes, there's a map, not just for them, but for me in terms of structuring the session. So it's a joy, and I just fell in love with my work all over again, and I feel inspired and in awe and grateful every time I get to do it.
Isn't it? It is pioneering and groundbreaking, and yet eternal. It takes us back. You and I have had this discussion about how it literally takes us back to origin, to what was, and yet somewhere along the way, through time and space and so forth, it gets eroded or lost, air quotes, lost. And this, for me with you, is it brings it back. It brings it full circle. And it to this point where the burnout and so forth and the responsibility, the weight of this, and this perception that it's external. Someone else is supposed to save me, heal me, and so forth. And yet what Tarotpy does and beautiful psychotherapy and therapy and hypnotherapy and dreams, when we integrate all of this, it says, no, see, it resides within you. I can walk with you. I am the professional. Yes, I can walk with you and so forth. However, your greatest healing comes from within.
Yeah.
And you're such a storyteller professional in that way. That's what's... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but this is so relevant to these times that we're bringing back ancient wisdom, that we're bringing
yes.
in spirituality to the sciences, because we're in a particular time where our concept of reality as being strictly materialistic is breaking down. It's not sustainable. It's what's making people so anxious, because when we look at our issues of climate change or sociopolitical upheaval or environmental trauma, we're recognizing that our view of the world is not something that feels sustainable or something we can control. And yet, within each of us is a deep core of resilience. And therapy shows also is that people can walk in feeling very fragmented and dissociated or alienated from themselves, from their friends, from the world. And what therapy does is that map that they lay out has an incredible inherent order to it and balance to it. And they discover this internal balance. So right now, doing this kind of work, I'm helping people to find that inner resilience in the face of uncertainty, in the face of something in their life coming to an end or upheaval in their lives, whether it's personal or collective. And I think we're all feeling a lot of the collective upheaval. And just like with dreams, those collective issues come right into the cards. We don't live in a vacuum. So the collective issues are in our dreams, oftentimes creating nightmares. The same thing happens with the therapy layouts. After the fires in Los Angeles, almost all the layouts in my groups had aspects of fire in them. But it also shows you where balance is, where resilience is, where the skills are to be able to navigate through these uncertain times. So I feel like this is an incredibly important way of working and tremendously relevant to our times. And to that point, tarot and psychology is trending now. There have been articles in the New York Times, in Scientific American, that in Psychology Today, saying that especially the younger generation want their therapist to integrate divination tools. The younger generation is fascinated with divination because they're looking for some deeper guidance that goes beyond what feels like shaky ground.
And to your point too, what was in the shadow or considered woo-woo or taboo or these types of things, meeting the age and the time, we come full circle. There's legitimacy that is brought with therapy. It's been legitimized because it's accredited. It's now, 3 times, third time's the charm. And yet they finally recognize, and to the younger generations as well, it's speaking to this fact that they have grown up with a greater awareness and it's less taboo. All these things are far less taboo now. And then beyond that, it allows you to walk through the door. It allows practitioners to say, I'm going to pull these out from underneath the table and have them prominently placed on the desk.
Right. I did a recent training, which was really beautiful because the training also, I have people work with each other with their own layouts. And so there's an incredible synergy that happens in the group. But I remember one of the younger therapists saying, oh my God, I feel like I finally have permission to bring all of me into the room. I get to be whole. And how do you work with your clients if you don't get to be whole?
Exactly.
So, and I've also found that with tarot enthusiasts, tarot readers who are tremendously gifted with their tools. But this gives them permission to sort of break out of the structures of traditional tarot reading. So again, they feel very liberated. And I do feel like I've had therapists say to me, thank you, I've been looking for something that would give me permission, that would legitimize this, that would mentor me. And then we can talk as a community about the guidelines in using this, because sometimes you are going to have clients that are going to come in and say, like one did early on in my practice, should I marry this man? I want to know, I want you to tell me the future. I want you to tell me what to do. And you have to know how to graciously sidestep that and get into what's really going on for them. That's their inner truth, and that they will find that answer.
Right. Absolutely. And to your point earlier, I just want to, because it's coming back in, literally this, just yesterday on Weekly Wisdom and Insights, you spoke about fragmented. The theme was fragmented realities, the illusion unmasked. So it's right on time. I mean, it's right on time for this moving beyond the barriers, the boxes that both psychotherapy has been in, if you will. And again, I give great reverence to everything in terms of the practice and the institutions and the education of it. It's simply this, there's more. It's yes, and there's more here to tarot, tarot readers with the spreads and so forth. There's an expansion.
Yes, there's an expansion. And to your point about legitimacy, there is a tradition to this. There is
It's
ancestry.
Ancient. Yes, it's ancient.
Psychotherapists working this way. So I was very excited to give a presentation recently at the Opus Archives, which is part of Pacifica Graduate Institute. It's an incredible university that is dedicated to depth psychotherapy. And so their luminaries, their mentors of depth psychotherapy are people like James Hillman and Marion Woodman. They were all talking about the image. James Hillman said, image is the royal road to soul making, and soul making is the purpose of psychotherapy. It is actually the purpose of our lives. That's what we're doing in our lives, is making soul of it. And what he's talking about is a deepening of character that happens through living our lives. But there's a whole, tradition of working with soul and image in the psychotherapy field, particularly in depth psychotherapy. And so it was very exciting to be able to present this work and to be able to really anchor it with the quotes and the teachings of these luminaries of depth psychotherapy.
Well, let's jump in. I want to get to some, we have two examples. So let's jump into, I'm going to bring up these two cards, King of Swords, and speak to the example with this client and how you use the Rider-Waite deck as a control deck.
Right. So I was training intern psychotherapist in dream work back in the late 90s. And so in the group, everybody could present a dream to work. If somebody didn't have a dream, I would invite them to do therapy, which is like working a dream with your eyes open. So one of these young, brilliant psychotherapy interns did not have a dream. I invited her to do therapy. I asked her, how many cards do you need to look at? And she said 7. How are they laid out? She said, like a body, head, torso, arms, feet, and then heart center. And so we just focused on the heart center. That's what I'm focusing on in this particular case. So the King of Swords came up as her heart center. Now, when you're looking at the image of an older patriarchal figure, what would we imagine we might be talking about that's relevant to this client? A boss, father. So the group asked her, are you close to your father? And she said, oh yes, my father's my mentor. He's very close to my heart. Now, as you said, I use the Rider-Waite deck as my control deck. I'm part scientist and therapist. And as a scientist, I want to show if we were using the most typical deck where the archetypal images are typical for most tarot, this is what the King of Swords would look like. He would be in a Renaissance garb holding a sword. But look at the difference that came up with the card that she picked from what's called the Neuzeit deck or New Age deck from Germany. This King of Swords has a missile. He's got space over his head. He's got walkie-talkie or earphones. He's a modern dude, and he's got nuclear and atom on the pedestal. And then this client said, oh yes, well, by the way, my dad is a nuclear scientist who works with the atom.
I mean, mic drop.
Mic drop. That's how mind-blowing these synchronicities are. So now we really are dealing with her father showing up in the middle of her reading. And now the question is, well, why? Why is her dad showing up right now? What's important? Dreams therapy always brings something up for our growth and evolution. And so we began to talk about the fact that as a training psychotherapist, she needed to be able to trust her emotional intelligence. But having been raised by a scientist father, she tended to lead toward her intellect. She was a brilliant woman. And so I did ask her, would you like to move your father off your heart space and see what else could guide you? And she said no. But this therapy session stimulated a series of dreams, as it often will. And she had a series of dreams in which her father moved next door, and she realized that she was finding balance between her and her father, between her heart and her intellect.
And isn't it fascinating? I mean, just for everyone listening, just to stop for a moment and realize, again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of tarot, oracle, angel decks. I mean, all of these choices. And in this moment, she chooses that deck. She chooses 7 cards in this formation, in this layout. She places at the center this card, turns it over, and it's literally representing her father. Now, synchronicity. There is no way other than the unseen, the soul, this higher power that is guiding us all. It's in the plane of the cards. It's in the images. They speak 1,000 words. You can't make that up if you tried.
No, you can't make this up. And that's what I often say is we're in that place of mystery. We're in the place of awe. We can talk about it in scientific terms, in terms of the self as an organizing principle, and that we do tend to draw the cards, that are connected to our beliefs. But you just can't make this up, how she pulled the exact card that represented her dad. And as I said, therapy gets to the heart of the issue immediately. And this was about her development as a psychotherapist so that she could still revere her dad and have him as a mentor and a guide, but also trust her own intelligence at her heart, her own emotional intelligence.
And there's a beauty you make this statement, the meaning is in the details, which is obviously absolutely true and spot on in this moment. And also speak to, because you mentioned this with this example, about arrange the cards, rearrange your life, and how you asked her if she wanted to remove this card from the heart center, and she said no. But speak to how arrange the cards, rearrange your life, how that aspect plays into therapy.
Well, so as I said, therapy is laying out a map, but sometimes you can see that it's not that somebody's having difficulty feeling aligned with themselves. And very often it may be because the cards are out of alignment. For example, somebody who is just overwhelmed with grief and just feels completely off. Well, she laid out 3 cards and grief was at the center. But there was something that she said was pulling her over here that she didn't know. And it was a woman who was at the center of her world, who was weaving a basket, who was called a master. And with grief at the center of her layout, that's all she could focus on. But when I invited her to shift the cards and she put the master at the center, then all of a sudden she could feel centered within herself because the images allow us to embody a different experience of ourselves and to envision a different view of ourselves. And then grief, and on the other side, so it was perfectly symmetrical, ecstasy was on the other side. She could hold grief and ecstasy in balance and be centered. So what I sort of look at this as is a psychic chiropractic session. We can rearrange the cards, and in doing so, we can envision ourselves differently. We can have a different sense of perspective and balance and order.
And it shifts energy. it shifts
just
energy, which shifts realities and where you are in the moment.
Exactly. And I ask people to do this very slowly when they're shifting the cards so that they can feel the energetic shift within them.
And there's a fallacy, Lauren, that says, that we can't rewrite the past. And there's a beautiful expression that says, rewrite the past, you rewrite the present future. It's, so yes, can we go back and relive it? No, how, literally, physically, literally. However, to this point with Tarotpy and with the rearrange the cards, you change the outcome and the energy, you can shift perceptions, you can shift placements. You can take that card and say, yes, I'm ready to release it, let it go.
Exactly. There's another thing that I do, which I call progressing the layout forward. So somebody may have a layout where they still feel like they're stuck in the problem, and all they can see is the problem, because that at that moment is their identity. So what I will ask is, why don't you try bringing out a card that can show you how this would look if it were healed, or how this would look as it evolves. And so they'll pick another card and maybe another card until they get to the place where, oh my gosh, they can see themselves evolve. They can see themselves healed. And again, images are the way we identify who we are. They are the way we practice life. That's why we dream, so that we can practice life and then go into our waking life with this embodied sense of self. So the images can help people embody and envision themselves differently.
And I love that how you can progress them forward so that they too, exactly. They're walking their path, they're walking their healing.
Exactly.
Let's bring up a second example. This one, another one I love. Explain this. It's the Moon card from two different decks, the Rider-Waite and I believe the Karma deck. But explain the example with this client.
Well, this was one of my early clients. So at the beginning, I was keeping my therapy sessions separate from my psychotherapy sessions for fear, metaphorically, that my license was going to get burned at the stake. So I saw people for therapy by word of mouth. And this woman actually, I was her birthday present. So she came probably expecting me to be a tarot reader and to tell her what she needed and what she needed to do. But what I noticed when she walked in is that she was probably in her 60s at the time, very heavy set. Something was really burdening her. And she was anxious about her sons, but she wouldn't tell me anything more than that. It was actually very hard to get conversation with her. And she just kept everything behind a frozen smile. So I asked her to pick a deck and then pick cards. And at the time, she picked this Moon card from the Karma Tarot deck, which is on the left, as an example of the problem. This was the problem. So that's the Karma Tarot deck on the left and the Rider-Waite on the right. And again, when you look at the Rider-Waite, it is most typical of most tarot decks. So I'm referencing that in my mind, and I'm realizing, well, in the Rider-Waite or in most decks, there are these two towers or two castles or two houses. But what jumped out at me at the Karma Tarot card of the Moon was there were two wine bottles. Now, I'd never seen that before. I had used the deck before and it never jumped out at me. So again, if an image jumps out at me, I assume that I'm picking up something intuitively about the client, and I'm going to ask about it. So I simply asked her, is there a drinking problem in the family? Well, both sons were alcoholic and the husband had died of the alcoholism. So now we're right into the issue that she's been trying to hide from herself.
And the tear, in this image, the tears coming, so in the mirror, it is a female shedding tears. I mean, it's a mic drop moment.
And you cannot make it up. And this is where, whether you say that the deeper self is presenting exactly what they need to present to be healed, to have insight or in spirit to be healed, or you could say the universe, this invisible mastermind, is participating with us in getting her exactly what she needs. to have clarity, to have insight, and then to be able to go forward.
And this is what's so amazing with Tarotpy, is that, it brings about new insights and profound results. And this Tarotpy opens a door to inner wisdom. And this brings it again, for me, this again brings it back home. It brings it back to source, to center, to the soul, to the psyche. And that says, see, new insights, profound results, and this opening, this doorway to what has always been present, your soul, your psyche, your soul, and how you place that on the table with clients, and how you teach people to do it themselves.
Right. And again, isn't it amazing that the soul knows what to put forward that was the truth of what was happening. And my job then is just to reflect on it and to help her then with reflecting on her inner truth. So it just lays the inner truth on the table. And very often it's what I call numinous. It's like people do not see how glorious they are. And that comes out in the layout, and they get to reflect on their inner beauty, their inner wisdom, their numinous. And when you touch that spark, that life spark of inner truth, again, it has a life of its own, and it's awakening. It creates a sense of aliveness. And that's where I said at the beginning that somebody would come out of a depression in one session. And it isn't that as a psychotherapist, I would recommend somebody who's in a deep depression to meet perhaps with a psychiatrist or their doctor and to talk about maybe doing antidepressants just to get, a safety net under them. But antidepressants don't work that quickly. And what I would find is that client who is in a deep depression would come in a completely inspired state in the next session because of the insights that they were having from the cards, and because of this quality of being able to reflect their own healing back to them.
And how empowering it is. And because you're literally changing tracks. You're rewriting scripts. All of a sudden you've left, the lane, the script that you were on. And all of a sudden, to your point, it awakens you to the presence of your soul, your psyche, this higher octave of yourself, the unseen, this guiding light. And then with the magic, the awe, the synchronicity, the wonders of what? Because it's unexplainable.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you just made that point, because I was wanting to say this earlier and then forgot. The whole thing of rewriting the script. In psychotherapy, there's a model of psychotherapy called narrative therapy. And the way that we tell our stories is how we see ourselves, right? In dream work, if you have a nightmare, one of the most powerful techniques that we can use to help people around nightmares is in their waking life state, have them go back with their imagination and change the ending. Decide how they would like to change the narrative. And that will actually stop PTSD, it will stop the nightmares, it will help their unconscious to be able to, heal them out of whatever they're struggling with. So narrative therapy, or working with narrative in dreams, is incredibly powerful. Well, that's the same thing we're doing with therapy. We are telling a narrative. It comes out as if it's like a storyboard from a movie. And then you get to tell your story and you get to advance it. Because if it isn't where you want it to be, you can always advance the story forward.
Isn't it? It's just masterful. It is so, of course, it's masterful in the sense, it originates from a higher octave. And you being the custodian of this in this lifetime, bringing it forward for people in this pioneering way and method, it's such a gift. And I just know from my own working with you, meaning the book, having met you and so forth, and then doing therapy on my own, it's just, each time it's a mic drop moment. Ask the question, rearrange the cards if need be, but when they come out and you're just like, how did that happen? I mean, that's just my own personal testimonial to it.
Thank you. And you're speaking to something that's important for me to know also, which is that the book can teach you how to do the practice.
Yes.
That the book takes you from the simplest techniques to the more complex, and that the end of each chapter are exercises so that you can learn how to do therapy for yourself. I always thought that this book could be used in groups, without a leader, just as a guideline so that people could practice therapy and then be sharing with each other very intimate discoveries, just the way that one would have a dream group. So, yeah,
well,
I'm so glad.
You just said the magic word, dreams. We're going to move into dreams and the healing power of dreams. And you say, when ego is asleep, dreams open a window to the soul, offering guidance for well-being, growth, and problem solving. Dreams give us information and the power to heal body, mind, and spirit. They allow us to access an inner wisdom that is far greater than our conscious awareness. How do you incorporate, and I just want to bring this slide in as well, dreams come in service of wholeness. So speak to how you incorporate dreams with therapy, hypnotherapy, and so forth in your practice.
So if somebody comes in with a dream, that's what we're going to talk about, is listen to the dream and listen to what the psyche is presenting in terms of what's going on for somebody. If they don't have a dream, then I invite them to do therapy. When you talk about hypnotherapy, I've incorporated hypnotherapy into my therapy and dream work. So I don't do strict, I don't put people into a formal trance anymore. When people are shuffling the cards or when they are sharing a dream, they are in a light trance because they're moving back into the deeper unconscious. I'll tell you my own story of how I discovered that dreams are like an X-ray to what's going on in our body, in our emotions, in our psyche. When I was 32, I was pregnant. And very excited about the pregnancy. And then probably about 11 weeks into the pregnancy, I had a dream. And in the dream, I returned makeup to a makeup counter in a mall. And the makeup is blood red. And in the first dream, it is eyeshadow. I didn't quite get that from the first dream. So the dream repeated itself a week later, but it added an image just to make sure that I got it. And it added the image of a gray round purse, a gray round sack. And inside is blood red makeup. I return it to the woman at the makeup counter and I say, the makeup's not right for me. And in this dream, it's blush. And she puts it on my face and she says, oh, but this is the latest style. And I said, no, I look like a clown. The makeup's not right for me. I woke up from that second dream and I said, I'm going to miscarry. How did I know? Okay, so the added image of that gray round sack to me was the uterus. And the blood makeup, that red makeup, was telling me the blood makeup of the baby was not right. But it also told me, just as you said, a picture tells 1,000 words, that I wasn't ready to wear the persona of being a mother. And so I was able to accept that. I was able to accept the miscarriage that happened a week later. About 2 months later, I was chasing bunny rabbits and caught one, and I woke up and I said, we need a pregnancy test. And I was in fact pregnant with my daughter. About 3 months into the pregnancy, and this is without recognizing the sex of the baby from an ultrasound, about 3 months into the pregnancy, I had a dream in which there was a little girl with curly blonde hair swimming on her back across a hot tub. It was my daughter at 3 years old, and I knew her. Now, about a month before I gave birth, I had a dream in which a woman was walking down the street, sidewalk with a girl in one hand and a boy in the other. I came and I took the girl's hand, and a voice said, "That's right, the girl comes first." My son was born 4 years later, and I kept having dreams of a son trying to come in. So I realized from these dreams that the unconscious knows so much more about what wants to birth through us, who we are, what wants to evolve through us, than we have in our conscious mind. And at that point, I realized I had to work with dreams. And therapy was evolving at the same time. So these are really go hand in hand for me. As
And
I
it's
say, therapy is like dreaming with your eyes open.
right, and yeah, dreaming with your eyes open, and imagery and signs and symbols and dreams and so forth. It's all the language of the unseen. It is the language of the soul. And so when I speak with clients or on Weekly Wisdom and Insights, it's about how when we communicate like this is earthly 3D physical communication. When it is the unseen and loved ones and so forth, the language is known to us. It's just, air quotes, different. And so it's how we align and attune to that language. And therapy, dreams, the psyche, the soul, all of these things, numbers, all of these things are the language of the soul.
And it's very practical. I mean, we think,
Right.
in the dreams I was just sharing, it was showing that dreams are able to see into what's happening in the body. They will tell us if there's disease before it even manifests. Dreams were telling me about my relationship with my child. So it was talking about relationships, it was talking about what's going psychologically. But our consciousness is not limited to our bodies or to even the moment. In our waking life, we need a linear narrative. But at the level of the unconscious, there's no limitation in time and space. And so what I like to say are dreams are our psychic internet. We're going to pick up information about what's going on in our world, in the collective. We pick that up at the dream level. We pick it up, as I said, in therapy as well. So whatever's going on collectively, and even this is very practical. I mean, I have a story of needing to buy a car, and the car that I wanted did not exist on the market at the time. I had been driving what I called a mommy van. It was one of those big vans, and not great at driving a big van. I would back it up. It had lots of dents at the back. And the day that I had to give back this van, because I couldn't find anything, I wanted something smaller, but with the same number of seats because I was still carpooling. Couldn't find it on the market. The day I had to give that van back, I had a dream in which there was a license plate in front of my face and it said Buick. Now I woke up from that dream and I said to my husband, so why couldn't it have said Lexus? I don't like American cars. I know that they're meant to be obsolete within a couple of years. And he said, but you know your dreams. You have to trust it. So I went to the Buick dealership. He said, ma'am, I don't know what you're looking for, but I wouldn't even sell you these cars because they actually have a tendency to roll. I came home, I said, no, and he said, you have to go back. My husband knows me well, he knows my dreams. I went back 3 times, and the guy finally said, ma'am, I don't know what you're looking for, but I just got this Xerox of a car that is not even advertised. It's not yet on the market. It's in the assembly line. It's a smaller car, but with 7 seats. It's called an SUV. That was the first time an SUV was introduced on the market. And I said, that's my car.
There it is.
It was called, and it was called a Rendezvous. It was designed by a woman, and it beeped when you backed up so that I didn't tempt it.
Those fancy things that are now standard.
This is our psychic internet. The answers are there. And we're not limited in time or space in terms of the intuition or imagination of the unconscious.
No, and to what degree are we open to them? And that is the key. Speaking of which, before we close out, because also on Lauren's website, dreamsandtarotpy.com, they're also on the, she has graciously given me permission, her big dreams, parts 1 through 5, are game changers. So by all means, if you have not seen them, go to her website, go to any of the social media for dearjames.com. They are there. Her article is at opusarchives.com. But the big dreams, parts 1 through 5, mic drop moments, especially against the backdrop of this time, of this moment. I want to pre-close out with this quote from Robbie Bosnack. The self doesn't develop fully until one immerses oneself in the collective. Share the deeper meaning of that, Lauren, with everyone, with the audience.
Okay, so that quote came out of a dream, actually. I was with Robbie Bosnack in a dream space in the Eiffel
that's right.
Tower.
Yes, that's right.
I'm sorry, in the Empire State Building. I was sitting at a table with Robbie when he said that. That's where profound wisdom comes through dreams. I'm sure Robbie would say that we don't become fully whole unless we're part of this collective. We don't separate from it to find our individuality and wholeness. We immerse ourselves in the collective to find our true individuality and what we're here to contribute to the whole. So that's what he said to me. And in the next moment, I'm in this Empire State Building. In the next moment, I see that there's the ocean under the Empire State Building, and I'm in the ocean. I see a tsunami coming, and I know I'm going to die. And I say, oh, this is what it is to die. If I close my eyes, it'll be peaceful. It's just the transition that's scary. I understand that the Empire State Building will be knocked over by a tsunami. And this was in 2012. I woke from that dream and I said, this is about the state of the empire. We are in a collapsing empire. And these dreams began to come fast and furiously to me over the next 10 years. So I was writing about these times that we're in right now, where we're experiencing huge social and political upheaval. That's not necessarily, as the dream said, it's the transition that's scary. When something like the tower is collapsing, that's a tower archetype. It's when established order is collapsing or breaking up. Something new wants to be born. So it can be a very exciting time, and that's where we need to turn our dreams, our imagination, our work with divination tools to say, what is it that wants to be born out of this time when the old structures are no longer working? So I think that, since the very beginning, again in the Bible, dreams were listened to as prophetic messages from the divine to help the community as well as the individual to know how to survive. Mm-hmm. And we need to turn back to those innate tools, innate ways of knowing.
Yes.
Because we're in very turbulent times, and this is a way to navigate through them.
And to your point in that dream and everything, it's only the scary, it's only the transition that's scary. And after that, of course, it's like once you walk through the fire, when you're on the other side, you often say to yourself, why'd you wait so long? It is that moment and this moment for all of us. So, and how a return to the way, the soul, the psyche, and how it is true north. It's always guiding us forward and to our highest octave of self. And it's a matter of, to what degree do we listen? Do we trust? Do we go as guided? And with incredible humans and practitioners like yourself, working with people to accelerate that reconnection to soul, to psyche. That's where we are. So, Lauren, I cannot thank you enough for being with all of us and sharing everything you do. I just want to bring this up. So you can work with Lauren through her practice based in Santa Barbara, California. Lauren offers individual consultations, workshops, trainings, and ongoing groups for both healthcare professionals and lay people around the world. Lauren, any closing sentiment, thought?
I just can't thank you enough, James, for orchestrating this conversation so beautifully. It's been very deep and very rich, and I just look forward to more. And yeah, I love being in these conversations with people, so I really invite them to come and be in a conversation. I do also work virtually, and
Yes,
my groups
absolutely.
are people around the world.
Yeah, so if you have the opportunity, when you're called and guided to reach out to Lauren, please do so. Again, I just want to put my specs back on here really quickly and bring up, it's Lauren Schneider, MA, MFT, dreamsandtarotpy.com. And so again, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us today, and cannot wait to, we're going to have a discussion later on in months to come about these big dreams and so forth. So Lauren will be back on the show again. But until then, we will see you in the next episode of Inspired Connections.
You've been listening to Dearjames Live. Gain intuitive insight, answers, and advice to your life questions, and so much more by tuning in next week and visiting Dearjames.com.